Oahu has a traffic problem, and the city has a proposed solution: build a train. Unfortunately, this train will do little, if anything, to help our traffic. One of the biggest problems with a train for Oahu is that our population does not live in concentrated residential communities. Instead, we live in a dispersed residential suburban type pattern. With this situation, an expanded express bus system would be far more effective in reaching out into the communities and helping with our traffic. It would be much less expensive, it could be implemented very quickly, and it would help reduce our traffic congestion. Buses can actually carry more passengers than trains. The rail would be extremely expensive, costing at least $6 billion, and it would only attract about another 2% of new riders to transit. This table is from the city's EIS statement. It shows that 5.9% of riders would use mass transit without rail, and if rail is built, that number would only increase to 7.4% using mass transit. So it's an increase of really just 1.5 percentage points for $6 billion of expenditure. It's just not worth it. This means obviously that 93% of us are still going to be driving our cars. And there are ways that we can enhance the traffic conditions for automobiles. And yet the city has done nothing to improve traffic conditions for a decade. Perhaps they don't want any improvements to our traffic conditions because they want the public to think that the only solution is rail. The city has admitted that traffic congestion will be worse in the future with rail than it is today without rail. This table is from the rail EIS, and for example, it shows currently there's over 11,000 vehicles EVA-bound in Kapalama. With rail in 2030, there'll be 15,000 vehicles, a huge increase of automobile traffic because the rail is going to be ineffective in reducing congestion. Whereas an express bus system would be much less expensive, it could be implemented very quickly, it would be more effective, and it would help reduce our traffic congestion. Buses can actually carry more passengers than trains. A given lane for express buses can carry about 10,000 people per hour, most of whom are sitting down, whereas rail would carry 6,000 people per hour, nearly 70% of whom are standing up for the whole trip. Buses have more capacity and they're more comfortable, and buses don't have to stop every mile at a station like the train does. Rail is restricted to a single narrow line that only reaches 6% of our island's population, unlike the bus system that extends across the entire island. We're going to take a close look in this movie at the residential patterns of the proposed train station areas, and we will find that not many people live near the rail, despite the city's misleading claims. This low population density is a major reason why the train will fail. It just will not attract very many riders. The city defines the rail route as this entire area, 23 miles long and 4 miles wide. Then the city claims that 60% of Oahu's population lives along the rail route. About half the rail route population lives in the urban center and will not be using rail. They drive, take a bus, or walk to work. Notice that the city includes population in the Manoa and Waikiki extensions all the way out to Kahala, even though they are not part of the current project. For these reasons, we can exclude half of the city's claim that 60% live in the rail route. We're going to closely examine the leeward population now, and we will find that only 6% of those people live within walking distance of the proposed rail stations, despite the city's claim that 60% live along the rail route. Therefore, most people would have to ride a bus to the train station, which involves several transfers. You're in your home, you have to walk to the bus stop, wait for the bus, ride the bus to the train station, walk from the bus stop to the train, wait for the train, then ride the train. It stops at every station. Walk to another bus stop, ride a bus, and then walk to your workplace. Not many people will be willing to make such a complicated journey, and yet this would be required if the city hopes to get any ridership for rail, because very few people live close enough to the system to walk to the station. It would be much faster to have an express bus that picks you up near your home and brings you to your destination. The train would not be easy to reach despite the city's misleading claim that 60% of us are on the rail route. Such misleading, inflated numbers from our city government are part of their ongoing propaganda campaign, which has distorted most aspects of the rail system in their attempt to sell it to the public with rosy projections. The city would like you to think that the rail is very accessible, very useful, but it is not. For a heavy rail transit system to be successful and attract riders, it needs to have many people living near the stations in medium and high-density apartments so that they can walk to the stations. This is the pattern in most European, Asian, and American cities that have successful metro lines. Oahu, on the other hand, has low-density housing distribution, even near the proposed train stations, despite the city's ridiculous claims. So let's take a look at some of the aerial photographs of the proposed rail station neighborhoods. The train would begin in Kapolei, where the first 3 stations have nobody living nearby. This is prime agricultural land with active farming taking place now that would be replaced by housing developments that would be encouraged by the rail. This would not be a good situation. We'd lose some prime ag land. Food production is very important to Oahu's future. It's critical that we protect our prime agricultural farmlands and continue growing food on this property rather than developing it and putting houses on it. Of course, the city is assuming there will be a lot of future housing constructed in these farm fields, which is questionable at best, and even if built, the plans call for that typical low-density suburban sprawl of it's about 10 housing units per acre. And notice how far away the stations are from the people who live in Ewa, the ones who need traffic relief the most. As we look at the remaining rail station areas, we want to examine how many people live within walking distance of the proposed stations. Where are the people coming from to ride this train? And we're going to find out there are not that many people living near the stations. We can define walking distance from the train stations as about a half a mile maximum, as shown by the circle around the train station. It's got a radius of about a half a mile. That's as much as we can expect most people to be walking from their home to get to the station, and they've got to walk that distance back again in the evening. The Westlock station is at the Waipahu Shopping Plaza and Waipahu Town Center. Homes in the Westlock area are a mix of single-family and townhouses, with a total of about 10,000 people living in the station area. The numbers we're citing here in the program come from our government 2010 census survey. These numbers are quite accurate. Here you see a map of the station area with the census tract superimposed. Another Waipahu downtown station, you might think, okay, heart of Waipahu, we've got some residential density. But when you look down the street a block away from Farrington, you find, once again, single-family residential sprawl. No high density here. Perhaps there are another 10,000 residents altogether within half a mile of the station. The next station is at Leeward Community College, and there's nobody living within a half a mile of Leeward. In the Pearl City station area, that's across the street from Sam's Club, there are 5,000 people living near the station. And at the next station, which is by Pearl Ridge in Aiea, there are another 5,000 people living in walking distance. At Aloha Stadium Station, there are just over 3,000 people living in low-rise apartments and houses nearby. At the entrance to Pearl Harbor, there are no civilian residents. Nobody lives by the airport. The station is a long block away from the terminal. A tourist would have to walk over there and then take a train to Ala Moana, transfer to a city bus with baggage, and on into Waikiki to some unknown destination. Not very likely that tourists would use the train. Lagoon Drive, also nobody's living there. Pu'uloa Road, Waiwai Loop. The proposed Middle Street Station comes next, near Sand Island. Next stop, Kalihi at Dillingham and Mokawea. But even here, when you drop in and take a look at the neighborhood, you'll see that it's low-rise residential mixed in with commercial and light industrial. Kapalama is the next stop in a primarily industrial district, including the campus of Honolulu Community College. Total population near these 3 stations is about 14,000. The final 6 stations are in the heart of urban Honolulu, including Iwilei, Chinatown, downtown, the Civic Center, Kaka'ako, and Ala Moana Shopping Center. While there are many thousands of people living in this urban core, it's unlikely that they are going to be taking the train because they walk to work. Therefore, these residents are not included in our count of population near train stations. To summarize these population figures, we find a total of 48,000 residents in walking distance of the leeward stations, which is under 6% of Oahu's population, yet the city claims 60%. The point of the train supposedly is to solve the traffic congestion problems from leeward Oahu, and that's where we've seen that there are very few residences around those proposed stations. Well, the city might also claim that, we're going to build transit-oriented development in the future around the leeward train stations. However, this has proved to be a bit of a fantasy in other systems around the country. It just doesn't happen. And besides, who would want to live in a cluster of high-rise, high-density apartment buildings way out in the middle of Kapolei? It's not very likely. It's really unfair for the city to propose a $6 billion transportation solution and rely for its passengers on new residents around stations living in high-density areas. This rail system is supposed to solve the existing traffic problem, to deal with residents who are living today and having to face this traffic burden every day. But we have seen that the rail system would do little, if anything, to help our existing residents. No matter how you look at it, very few people would use this train. Of course, a much better transit solution is an expanded express bus system. This can be easily implemented with a much shorter time frame, and it would cost much less money. Express buses can effectively move large numbers of people at high speed from the suburbs into downtown. And you don't need high-density residences around bus stops. The bus system can reach out and efficiently service our existing island-wide community. An expanded bus system could be implemented almost overnight by using the buses from the city's inventory of 450 buses and from some private bus companies. The existing zipper lane has a capacity of 2,000 vehicles per hour, which can easily accommodate 200 express buses along with HOV vehicles. And those 200 express buses will carry 10,000 seated commuters per hour, which would pull as many as 8,000 vehicles off the road. There are ways that we can enhance traffic conditions for automobiles. We can extend zipper lanes, synchronize traffic lights, add lanes here and there, prohibit parking during rush hour, and pave the roads, all of which will speed things along. But you'll notice that none of this has been done by recent city administrations because they've been obsessed with rail. They don't want any traffic improvements because then the public might realize that we don't need rail. This train would be the largest financial burden and the biggest waste of money in the history of our state. Fortunately, we can do one thing about it. There's a mayoral election coming up this year, which is going to be extremely important, and the voters will have a clear choice between a pro-rail slate of candidates and a very strong anti-rail candidate. And now it's up to you.